What's going on, everyone? Kaneda here, and today we're talking A24's newest fantasy film starring Dev Patel and directed by David Lowery, The Green Knight. And I figured the best way to talk about this movie is to hear from someone who writes and creates fantasy world themselves. And I'd like to welcome back to the show Eastin Deverna. Eastin, what did you think about this movie? I know we've been talking about it like on Instagram, but I've been dying to hear from you about how you feel about it.
Yeah. So off the bat, I loved it. I thought it was incredible. It was. I felt like it was very much like an art film. It was doing a lot of different things. It was telling the story very visually. I think with the scenery, the colors, setting a lot of the mood and the tone of everything. You had some long segments without dialogue and things like that, and it just sort of. You needed some patience to wait and see what happened and see how things went. And, we were chatting a little bit before the show just about how it took chances on doing things differently, sort of breaking away from the mold of, modern blockbuster or, movie storytellings. I've seen some criticism online where people are like, it sucked. I was waiting the whole time for something to happen and then it ended, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, all right, it wasn't for you, clearly. But to me, so my overall thoughts were that I loved it. I mean, as a fantasy fan, as a literature fan, it just checked all the boxes for me. And it just, some of the things that it did so differently were, I don't know, I thought they were inspiring and so well done, I thought.
No, I appreciate it. It's true. Like, I think the visuals were really amazing. Like, as soon as the first shot opened up where the crown's floating down, then he catches on fire. I was like, okay, wait, let me get some snacks because this is going to be right up my alley. And then it's funny because like I went into it cold, and I didn't know that it was going to be a King Arthur tale. Mm. So I'm quite particular to King Arthur stories, and I love Lancelot and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So as it's going, they don't use the character names. They like reference everyone as like the king, the lord. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying to myself, oh, this sounds like a King Arthur story. And as it was going, I was like, okay, this is right up my alley.
It is. Yeah.
And it's just like you said, like I absolutely loved it. And, that really long shot when he's just riding the horse and they just have smoke coming down. It was just
so cool,
refreshing, and he's got the fox following, talking fox. Who doesn't want a talking fox?
Yeah,
I loved it.
It was so cool. I mean, something that I thought with people's expectations. They see, this new Hollywood fantasy film comes out, and everyone, probably is thinking, oh, this is going to be like the next Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or whatever. Those are the things that, if you're not a fantasy sort of regular, and you don't look for all the different movies and you don't look for, all the different books, these are sort of the more mainstream ones that are on people's minds. And so when they saw that, here's a new fantasy with Dev Patel, great actor, big name, maybe they're expecting something along those lines. And then when they see what this movie actually is and the things that it's doing differently, they were probably like, whoa, well, this is not Game of Thrones, or whatever. Like I said, like that modern, like 3-act structure, that the typical hero's journey. Granted, there are some things for sure that were there, but it was almost like episodic in this journey, in this adventure. And to me, the fact that it didn't follow it made it almost feel more real to me because, like life doesn't follow a, you don't have a plot outline or a template for, the rise and fall and then, rise again of a hero. It's like things happen in random and different spots and different places. And I felt like the movie kind of took that meandering path a little bit. And I love that. To me, that was refreshing. I love the fact that it felt episodic. It had like the different chapters in it.
And those title cards, like every different font they used, cool. it just broke it up and it made it interesting, and then like it brought you in more.
It's kind of like a callback to old movies too, which I really thought was neat because you don't see that done in modern movies as much.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the scenes that's really stuck out to me was the Winifred scene when he finds the house and it's just this creepy house in the swamp. he goes in, falls asleep, and he's haunted by this ghost, and to me, that whole thing, granted, I don't think that was in the original poem. I think it definitely is an Arthurian legend, or something to do with Winifred in there. I'm not as versed or polished on my Arthurian legends as I wish I could be to talk about this tonight. But that alone, like that whole thing could have been like a short story or a short film to me. Like that whole interaction with, that had its own sort of, he had a supernatural influence there. Winifred coming in, there was something intriguing. She needed help. He needed to be the hero. He needed to learn something. He had to jump into literally the abyss to find her skull, bring it back. And it had its own like rise and fall and resolution all in that one scene alone.
Yeah.
I thought that was so neat. I just remember that scene stuck with me for quite a bit.
Yeah. Just like for that. And like when he gets the thieves before that, like he encounters the thieves.
Oh, yeah.
And then that last shot where he's like, "I'll take the quest for you," and he runs off with his axe. I'm like, what? Like,
like, rest your bones.
Like that stuck out with me too. And hearing you compare it to the poem, it makes me think about the ending. And I know we talked about this beforehand, where it's a little bit open to interpretation. I know they changed it from the poem, where it's we just end with the Green Knight potentially chopping off his head. And I know you saying in the poem that it's a scratch, but do you want to get into do you think he achieved that silver code that they talk about in the beginning?
Yeah. So the ending was great. I mean, there's a lot to unpack about the ending. First of all, I thought it was really cool. And then, something actually Kay, co-creator on A Guardian, brought this up to me before I saw it. She said it kind of, some of the things it does plays a little bit along the same lines as what we do in A Guardian, where, spoilers, but we start talking a little bit about sort of different timelines and, different paths that people can take in life, and what things, is free will a thing, or are we bound by the chains of fate? Are we all stuck on a path, sort of thing? And I think that movie was playing with a little bit of that. And one of the things leading up to the ending, which I thought was interesting, because you get a glimpse of sort of that alternate reality or alternate vision when the thieves leave him in the woods, and the camera circles around, and you see the skeleton. You see what would happen if he just stopped fighting and gave up, and didn't continue on his quest. He would just lay there and die. Mm-hmm. And that was cool, because I like the circular thing, which was a play on the when they had to cut to the like the puppet scenes with the wheel.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a neat little call to that. But anyway, so I thought that was cool, because like that could have been an ending for Gawain had he just given in, not fought anymore, gave up, got tired, let himself die. The world is too tough. The world is too hard. I went out and I tried, but I couldn't do it. That was one way for it to end. But then he, shuffles along. He cuts his hand on the back of the, I guess it was a sword.
Yeah.
Because the axe was gone at that point. But anyway, so when you get to the ending, and he's still got the green sash on, he's equivocating. He can't decide whether or not he should honor his part of the bargain, let the Green Knight chop off his head or not. The Green Knight, it was funny almost, right? The Green Knight goes to chop. He's like, no, wait. The Green Knight's like, okay, what? Like, this was the deal. And then he runs away. And then you see sort of, again, you get that alternate reality of if he goes down this path, whether it's in his imagination or whether it was, an actual alternate timeline or reality, he goes down because he didn't fulfill his end of the bargain. He couldn't live up to that chivalric code. He becomes king. However, it's sort of like karma, right? His kingdom falls. He goes onto the battlefield. He sees his dying son. I think his first love was cheating on him, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't his baby. And so like all these bad things were starting to happen because he couldn't be honorable. He couldn't do the right thing, as part of that bargain with the Green Knight. So then all of a sudden that ends, and you see him like as an old man, like they're throwing like rotten tomatoes at him or whatever, and then that scene ends, and then he's back in the current timeline, the current reality, and he takes off the sash, the one thing that was protecting him. Was it really protecting him? Was it in his head? Was it sort of like that Macbethian prophecy thing, like self-fulfilling or not? So he takes it off, and then he says, I'm finally ready. I know what I need to do. So yeah, I believe in the poem, like I said, I think the Green Knight nicks him in the neck just as a lesson. Okay, you learned your lesson. Now go back and rule, live your life, rule your kingdom, whatever. I don't know. In this one, I like the fact that it ended ambiguously like this, because like you said, you want to believe that a character learned. You want to believe that a character changed, and I think he did. And I think that was shown by literally taking off the sash around his waist and saying, "Now I'm ready. Now I'm not going to live my life by this. I'm not going to believe that I'm protected at all times. I'm going to accept the consequences of my actions," sort of thing. So part of me, the optimistic side of me wants to say he learned his lesson. He did change and evolve throughout his journey, whether it was through the things that literally happened to him along the way, or whether it's through that vision of the other lifetime. I want to say that he did learn his lesson, and I want to hope that the Green Knight didn't chop his head off.
Yeah.
That's sort of my look at it.
I'm feeling the same way. Because the last line is, the Green Knight says, like, "Now, little knight, off with your head," it giving you the implication
but he kind of laughs about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's all like misdirection. I think it's like you said this before we started recording. It's like the Inception spinning top at the end.
Yeah. Right.
And
right, exactly.
it leads you thinking, and that's what I loved about it, is because afterwards I immediately had to go research what was the ending about, and I came up with interviews with the director, and he even said similar things where it's like, if you can live with yourself, then you can also live in peace, and that he still has room to grow as a person. That's kind of where they wanted to leave it. So I think that he did learn, and like he did go back, with just a scratch. Potentially, at least that's where my head's at.
For sure, but in along those lines, and even if you want to look at it the other way, where the Green Knight actually does follow through and chop off his head, like you said, like he's at least reached the point where he was ready to die. He was, even though he was young, he had a whole life in front of him, all this kind of stuff. He said, "I've learned my lesson. In this moment, I am content. I've done everything I could. I've looked back. I've thought about things. I've reflected on things, and I'm ready in this moment." And that's something that I don't think a lot of people really ever have the chance to reflect on or make that decision. People don't. You don't know when you're going to die. You don't have time to look back at your life and say, "Okay, I've learned from my mistakes. I'm not gonna. I regret what I've done. I'm not going to go down that path or whatever. I can't anymore because I'm going to die. And in this moment, I've reflected and I feel content with the life I've lived, with all of the good and the bad and my regrets and sorrows and the happiness that goes with it. And now I'm ready." That doesn't happen. So as a fantasy movie, like that is interesting to me, that someone would be granted that opportunity, looking death in the face, thinking about things, saying, "Okay, I understand how I've gotten here, and I'm ready." That's another interesting way that it could have ended, and it would have been. It's not a terrible ending. It's not like a bad ending. It's still in a weird, macabre way, kind of a happy ending.
Yeah, because he found that peace.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so it's kind of just like we were talking about that too. Like once you find that peace with yourself. That's we were talking about that even in your personal lives. Like that's why I related to this movie. I was like wow, I love that, and it makes me ask, how did this movie inspire you in your creative works?
So a couple of things. Very, very inspirational to me. I love fantasy, obviously. One scene in particular inspired me give me the idea for a novel, actually.
Oh, whoa.
So there's that. I mean, it's inspired me to write a new book, a new fantasy book.
That's a good movie right there.
Yeah. When you think about something so much, and just like, well, anyway, another way, like I just loved what it did with the scenery, the settings, the colors alone, and you've read A Guardian, and you see what Kay does with the colors. Each scene has its own color palette, and that helps set the mood and the tone. And this movie did that as well. And I love that kind of stuff. Like, you don't need exposition, you don't need a ton of dialogue. Like, this story is being told through these unique and interesting shots. Like you were saying, where he's just walking. I mean, how long did that shot linger when he was leaving the kingdom? Just on
at least 2 to 3 minutes. It's just with the kids. I loved it.
The kids were chasing. Yeah, I loved it too. But and I liked it because, and this was inspiring to me, because I started thinking to myself, like, because no other movie, like, what movie do you see that does that? Like, you have a very limited time and budget, and you're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes on a person riding. It was very much an older style of movie shot, I feel like, from like an old Western or an old like samurai film or something. You would see those lingering shots like that. But you don't see it anymore. Everything nowadays is like
so much.
Cut.
Yeah, no, I'm watching that scene and I'm just like, oh my God, like, I never see this, because you never see the knight on the way to the battle. And then I'm thinking, like, man, he must be thinking I'm really cool. These kids are like, oh, he's gonna go tear it up. And then but in his heart, he must be terrified. And and it's because we were there for 3 minutes that I started having these ideas, and I was like, wow, I never see this, and I love it.
Right. And I bet that was intentional, because it went on just long enough where you start questioning yourself, like, what are they, like, what is something going to jump out? Like, what are they doing here? Like, but it doesn't always have to be that way. You know what I mean? It can just be an introspective, silent shot of somebody starting a journey. And to me, that was a powerful moment. And it was sort of setting the mood and the tone and sort of the rules for the rest of it, where, you were going to see some unconventional shots, some unconventional decisions as far as storytelling goes, and, the episodic nature of it. Just, as you went about seeing his growth. So I loved that stuff. And the thing that I think I take away the most is that in my own writing, I've been trying to really think about, I don't know, so I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I consider myself a pantser when it comes to writing. And so you have a plotter and a pantser in storytelling. Typically a plotter is someone who does a detailed outline, and they're going to have, a notebook or a document, and it's going to say every single scene, every single plot beat, every single emotional beat, blah, blah, blah. I can't do that. I tried to do that when I was in my MFA, and my stories came out so super stiff, because I was trying to make it fit to this thing. And then as I was getting further into my career and starting to write a lot of different books, I was like, I have a beginning, I have a character, I have character motivation, and I have an ending. So I'm just going to sort of start here and end there, and anything in the middle is up for negotiation. We'll see what happens. And so I've always kind of been, I used to be a little bit more critical and being like, well, I'm not exactly following, every scene needs to be 5 pages, or the 3-act structure needs to follow each of these points. And I've always been like a little bit wary about that, until I started saying, well, screw it. That doesn't work for me, so I'm going to do it this way. So seeing this movie was kind of validating for me, because it didn't follow all of the typical rules that you see in Hollywood. It did its own thing, and it was beautiful, and it was thought-provoking. I mean, here we are talking about it, and I'm going to have to rewatch it. It's inspired me to write another book. So I feel like all those sorts of things, just the fact that it did its own thing, and it did it well, and it wasn't afraid to take these chances in storytelling.
It didn't pull back. Like, it could have in moments, shied away from things, or taken traditional tropes. But it stuck to its guns.
Sometimes a movie will set up like some really interesting stuff in the first or second act, and then it just falls back into, your CGI action backed finale, third
Yeah.
act, blah blah blah. It all ends the same, and like, so this didn't let me down because to the very end it did its own thing, and it did it very well, I thought. And I loved the giants. That made me think little Through the Shadow Titans.
Yeah.
There. I thought that was a really cool scene too.
I love the visuals on that, and I'm telling you, like, if I don't see some Green Knight costumes after that, I'm going to be disappointed.
How could you not? The costumes themselves were amazing, right?
Like the crown, everything was cool.
So good.
It makes me wonder.
The gold cloak, yeah. Like,
yeah.
I want that just to wear in the fall, like in my backyard.
So just make me wonder, if you could have a fantasy companion like the fox, any animal, what would it be?
Okay. So honestly, I really love the fox.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna choose the fox because it's already been done here in the Green Knight so well. Also in the Little Prince.
Right.
I think what I would pick probably would be an owl. I think that would be
Ariel.
Yeah.
Give you that perspective.
Yeah. I have and actually I have a character in The Runner, the novel that I did. She is she's a teenager. She goes on this adventure in this post-apocalyptic world on a journey as well by herself, like our friend Gawain. But her companion is, because all the runners in this world, they get an animal companion that goes with them, and so she has a little owl, and it's one of the last owls on the planet, and it's like her eyes in the sky. It's wise. It tries to help her. She doesn't always listen, just like Gawain.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something cool about owls to me. They're wise. They're nocturnal. They're super interesting. I remember, like, as a kid, just being like, seeing all the different types of them, and wow, owls. They're like a really weird bird, but they're super cool. They're interesting.
No, and they always look like they know more than they're telling. So.
Yeah, definitely. And they always look like they know more than I do. So I listen to them. Yeah.
And so, like, I definitely thought, like, if I couldn't pick a fox, I'd probably pick an eagle. And I know that, like, the eagle the whole time, like, I would just be doing it because it looked cool, while I'm sitting there like, dude, you're really clamping down on my shoulder too hard right now.
You're making me bleed.
Loosen up a little bit, but, like, just like how you said, like, it'd have to be like the last owl. I feel like I love dogs so much, like, I'd have to have like one of those, we have one of the only hybrid werewolf dogs left out there.
Now, if you could have a hybrid werewolf fantasy companion, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think that would be my dream. But I think that it's safe to say that we both love this movie. And I'm excited to talk to more fantasy movies about it with you. But my one last thing is, I want to know what you're working on. I know you got a lot going on. Tell us where we can find your work. And when can we expect A Guardian Chapter 2?
Oh, yeah. So I'll start with the last question first. So A Guardian Chapter 2 is underway. Kay actually has the script. She's working on it right now. So this is going to be, well, this is actually Chapter 4, but it's Volume 2.
Volume 2, okay.
So we hope to probably get that going sometime early next year, I think.
Nice.
We should probably start having some visuals and things ready to start putting out there. So once we have that stuff, I'll let you know. And I'll send you some concept stuff as well.
Oh, I'm excited to see it.
Exclusive behind the scenes stuff for you.
Because, like, I've been seeing you've been tweeting out like a lot of stuff that you've been working on. So I just want to know, like, what else can we expect? Anything coming out soon, or where can we find anything potentially?
Yeah. So Lost Souls, The Trials of Cassie Capricorn is a new book that I'm doing with Sean Daly. He's my good buddy. He's up in Toronto. Nice. We actually have never met in person, but we've known each other for like 6 or 7 years now. We've been working together for a while in comics. Anyway, he's an amazing artist, an amazing storyteller. So I had this idea for this book called Lost Souls. And what it's about is, so it opens up with a young princess on the night of her coronation. She gets murdered, assassinated, essentially. She doesn't know who did it. Her whole family is killed. She's killed. And then she wakes up in the afterlife.
Okay.
On her side, there's where she was stabbed, there's literally a piece of her missing. So a part of her soul is gone. she meets this old deceased sea captain named Skipper Vermigut, and he is sort of lost in the afterlife as well. He's sort of like her Virgil, like Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
And so he's sort of the guide through the afterlife. And so she meets death. He gives her 3 trials. She has to overcome them in the afterlife in order to solve the mystery of her murder and find the missing piece of her soul. So that's going to Kickstarter very soon. It's going to be a graphic novella length, so it's going to be around 50 to 60 pages.
Nice.
We have a bunch of cool reward tiers, and we're excited for that. That's going to launch at the end of this month. So I was
wow.
I'm going to be working on the video for the Kickstarter tomorrow, and then we're gonna launch that really pretty soon.
I'm excited to see that one.
Yeah, then a bunch of other stuff too. Working on another book with Marcus, who you met when we first did our.
Yes.
We first met actually. Yeah, he and I are working on a book. More a Guardian than that game book combo I was telling you a little bit last time. So I'm staying busy, and now I have this new book I have to write thanks to the Green Knight. So.
Yeah, right. Well, we're excited to see it, and you can find a link to Eastin's work below in the description. And I want to thank you all for watching. Until the next time, we'll see you soon.